citizens' investigation into President Trump's 2016 presidential campaign. Barr told lawmakers during a hearing on Capitol Hill Tuesday,
"I am reviewing the conduct of the investigation."
The Attorney General also testified that the DOJ's Inspector General was looking into the FBI's FISA warrant application process. Meanwhile, Democrats are questioning Barr's tactics.
I don't think Barr has conducted himself in a manner that earns people's trust.
That's Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer.
Fox's Sean Langell. Meantime, Attorney General William Barr tells Congress he will release the full Mueller report within a week, but it will contain redactions.
I am relying on my own discretion to make as much public as I can.
Barr's testimony at a House Appropriations Subcommittee is the first appearance since releasing bottom-line conclusions of Mueller's work last month. The AG says after the public release of the redacted version, he'll work with Judiciary Committee leaders on additional requests, but does not plan to ask a court to release secret grand jury testimony.
Fox's Jared Halpern. Senator Bernie Sanders will introduce a new version of his Medicare for All plan in the Senate Wednesday. That's expected to shake things up in the 2020 presidential campaign by reopening the debate over his call to eliminate private health insurance. And as the vote counting nears an end, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's Likud party appears close to securing a victory. It's a tight race against Benny Gantz, and if he wins, Netanyahu will gain a fifth term in office. This is Fox News.
Are you waiting too long for a home loan decision? Are you looking for a bank that understands your needs and can close your loan quickly at today's super low rates? Then come no further than Bank Pacific. Our home loan specialists are friends and neighbors from your community, and our decisions are made right here in Hagåtña. Bank Pacific, where we're open to closing your loan in a hurry.
Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal housing lender, credit conditions apply. Viva Bank Pacific.
It's important to have claims process that works for you. At Guahan Insurance Services, we make things simple and convenient. Same door you walk in to purchase your insurance is the same door you open to file your claim. We can't pretend that the car insurance claims process is fun, but we can promise a hassle-free and speedy recovery without any runarounds. For your home, auto, and business insurance, visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center on Marine Corps Drive in Tamuning. Don't forget to like us on Facebook or give us a call at 475-1162 or text 929-SAVE. That's 929-7283.
A measles crisis in New York City prompts the mayor to order nearly everyone in a heavily Orthodox Jewish neighborhood to get vaccinated for measles or pay hefty fines of up to $1,000.
Most kids in those communities are not immunized, prompting the mayor to order mandatory vaccinations for residents in those areas. Authorities have already told the area's Jewish secondary schools to exclude non-vaccinated kids. Any school with a less than 95% vaccination rate is barred from allowing non-vaccinated children into the building. According to the CDC, someone who is infected can easily spread the virus to 90% of the people around them.
Fox's Brian Yanis. A World War II legend dies. Retired Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Richard Dick Cole was the last surviving member of Doolittle's Raiders. Cole, who served as Jimmy Doolittle's co-pilot for the famous 1942 raid on Tokyo, passed away yesterday in San Antonio, Texas. He was 103 years old. Get ready for a funny scare as Disney gives Monsters, Inc. a spin-off series.
Scary feet, hook the kids away, twins, and a bunk bed.
John Goodman, who voices Sully, Billy Crystal, who voices Mike, are back on board the series titled Monsters at Work. They will be joined by members of the original voice cast, John Ratzenberger, Jennifer Tilly, and Bob Peterson. The new series picks up 6 months after the original movie, with the power plant at its center now harvesting the laughter of children to fuel the city of Monstropolis. As Tyler, a talented mechanic, tries to make his dreams come true of working on the laugh floor alongside Mike and Sully. Michelle Polino, Fox News.
And a Jeopardy record. James Holzhauer sets a record for a single day's winning. He racked up more than $110,000 yesterday. The previous record was $77,000 set 9 years ago. I'm Carmen Roberts, and this is Fox News.
Hey, are you ready to afford the good life? For example, cooking in a gourmet kitchen that is as amazing as your skills. Or how about paying off tuition? Or maybe expanding your home to make room for your parents? Live beyond your dreams, within your means, with a low-rate home equity line of credit from First Hawaiian Bank. To learn more or to apply, visit any branch or FHB.com. First Hawaiian Bank. It all starts with yes. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
Attention homeowners, if you don't have a solar energy system on your roof from Micronesia Renewable Energy, now is the time to get one. MRE solar energy systems now come with battery storage for zero money down. This means that your home will have power even when the island power isn't available, like during power outages or during and after storms. The inconvenience of not having power for your home is a thing of the past. Don't be left in the dark. Call 632-2613 for a free consultation. MRE, the smarter choice.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And here's my comment on the Second Amendment for today. No comment. And you can quote me on that.
It's not what you said, sir. It's what you didn't say.
True enough, Real Joe Cruz. A student of Sherlock Holmes, if there ever were one. Thank you. Okay, so we've done away with, or we've moved right on past the Second Amendment. What's next on the agenda here, Real Joe Cruz?
Zemi Ikutni.
Which stands for?
Meet the Press.
All right. Well, it looks like the Daily News wants back in. Either the Daily News wants back into the game, or they're having trouble with their internet connection back to Gannett, because they actually wrote their own editorial today. Yeah, how about that? And it actually appears to have some substance. I guess I could characterize it this way. Today, the Daily News is talking trash. Right on the editorial page. And here's the headline of today's editorial. Our View, place trustee in charge of ORDOT dump funds. Now, you'll recall that before 2008, we had a place called ORDOT Dump. Going way, way back, before World War II, there was a depression, like a hole in the ground, up in ORDOT. And the history is that the Navy used to dump trash in that hole. Well, after the Organic Act in 1950, when the government of Guam was created to take over the civil government of the island from the Navy, the government of Guam used that hole in the ground as a place to dump trash. And that hole in the ground was given a really beautiful title. It was called the ORDOT Dump. So the government of Guam kept dumping trash in that hole in the ground until sometime in the 80s, the feds came along. We had the environmental wackos sucked their heads up sometime in the early 70s, primarily in response to a book by Rachel Carson called The Silent Spring, and we became very, very concerned with environmental concerns, clean air, clean water, etc. So the U.S. EPA came out and said the ORDOT dump was leaching really bad stuff into the Lawnfit River. Ironically, perhaps if that leaching had started a little earlier, the church wouldn't be in the problem that it's in right now, if you've been following that along, because so many of the allegations of clergy misconduct involve a certain priest taking young boys it's a skinny dip in the Longfit River. Well, maybe if the river had been polluted, well, anyhow, that's another story. We won't go there. But in any case, the EPA said, you got to do something about this leachate from your dump that's flowing into the Longfit River. And we horsed around with it. You know, we went through the ordinary posturing, political speeches, political rhetoric, etc. But let's face it, there's no good politics in spending money on a dump. If you're a candidate for office and you say, I'm going to build schools, people think that's great. I like schools. I'm going to build prisons. I don't like that. I don't like prisoners. I'm going to build a dump? What? No. Let's spend our money on really nice stuff, pretty stuff. There's nothing pretty about a dump. Well, that hole in the ground called the ORDOT dump over the years stopped being a hole and in effect became a significant terrain feature on our island as the trash piled up and piled up. I would guesstimate that maybe the pile got to be 300 feet high at the highest point. And the EPA sued the government of Guam. There was a lot of gnashing of teeth, etc. And finally, the District Court of Guam, presiding Judge Francis Gatewood, appointed a receiver to take control of the dump and to clean up the mess. Well, the way a receiver operates, a receiver is a creature of a court order. In this case, the court order was the United States in a case called the United States versus Government of Guam. So pursuant to that court order, the judge appointed a receiver whose actions were basically controlled by the judge. Whatever the receiver did, wanted to do, etc., would have to come before the court for permission. The court's contempt powers were used with respect to the government of Guam. And like it or not, we wound up closing the ORDOT dump and creating a couple of landfills down in a place called Ladzun, down in Inarajan, over the vehement objections of the folks who lived down there. There were 3 possible sites, and the legislature chose Ladzun as a site where the trash would be dumped into 3 scientifically designed cells that were set up so that there wouldn't be leachate leaching into the groundwater. The methane gas generated by the decomposition of the trash was dealt with, etc. A state-of-the-art dump, and the receivers did all this. They did a lot of other things too, including fixing it so that if you didn't have to be you didn't have to have a month to wait to have your trash picked up regularly, etc. And the receivers really came in and did a workmanlike job and cleaned up this whole trash situation. Now, it cost us a pile of money to hire these guys. If you like the movie The Music Man, these out-of-town Jaspers in pinchback suits came in and charged us a lot of money to clean up the dump. Money that could have been saved had we just done it ourselves. But as I mentioned, there's no good politics in building a dump. So the 2 cells are the new landfill is in place at Ladzun. The ORDOT dump is closed. It's starting to look like a tourist attraction. It's kind of starting to look like the Guam Pyramid. And the government of Guam, especially in the Calvo administration, wanted to get the receivers out of here. And the Calvo administration said, it won't cost us so much money. And that's probably true. If we could do it locally, it would be cheaper. So the legislature passed a law creating the Guam Solid Waste Authority. which I thought was a mistake. A bill was introduced by Tom Atta, which would have assigned the operation of the solid waste operation to the Commission on Consolidated Commission on Utilities, the CCU, which I thought would have been a good way to go. But instead of that, we created a new board, the Guam Solid Waste Board, and they have hired a manager. They want to get control of the whole operation from the receiver, and there's a question as to how to handle funds. A certain funds will be given to the Solid Waste Authority to spend on things like the closure or the complete closure of the ORDOT dump, the expansion of the new landfill, etc. So the question is, who should control these funds that are going to go to the Solid Waste Commission? And the answer is addressed in this editorial, and it goes like this. Given the government of Guam's troubled history with solid waste operations, it's only logical for the federal court to appoint an independent trustee to oversee ORDOT dump funds. In a March status hearing, Andrew Gale, chairman of the board for the Solid Waste Authority, proposed the authority be allowed to oversee ORDOT dump funds instead of hiring a trustee. The federal receiver in charge of solid waste reported it's having difficulty finding a trustee because local banks don't have trust departments. Total post-closure expenses are expected to cost about $15 million over 30 years. But federal attorneys think the ORDOT dump needs to be controlled by a trustee. Simply put, an independent trustee answerable to the court will serve a critical role to ensure both adequate funding for post-closure care and property disbursement for authorized post-closure expenses at the ORDOT dump, federal attorneys stated in a brief filed on March 23rd. Chief Justice Frances Tydenko Gatewood has postponed the end of the receivership because she felt the government of Guam wasn't ready to assume control of solid waste operations. It's also important to remember that the island's solid waste operations have been under court-ordered receivership since 2008 because Gov Guam failed to close the environmentally hazardous ORDOT dump and build a modern sanitary landfill by deadlines established by the federal court. Elected officials fought the receivership and the site of the new landfill for years, which only served to further delay the process and rack up legal costs. And of course, whenever I run into something like this, I have to parenthetically inject that anything that generates fees for lawyers can't be all bad. And before the receiver took control, trash services were horrible. Residents often had to wait for days, if not weeks, for the garbage to be collected. There were no standards enforced regarding what could be deposited in the dump, and recycling was marginal at best. I remember one story where the government of Guam was renting a backhoe for $10,000 a day to be used at that landfill. At the dump. Going on with the editorial, it wouldn't be smart to simply trust the government of Guam to take over solid waste operations entirely. The receiver should be allowed to finish working on the ORDOT post-closure plan, the landfill gas remediation plan, and the groundwater monitoring program, and an independent trustee should be hired to oversee ORDOT dump funds to ensure money is properly spent. Well, I don't know, maybe the Daily News had a lot of time to work on this while they were running Gannett editorials, but this is a real editorial. Agree with it or disagree with it, it meets all the criteria for a real editorial. So much for the Daily News. Let's take a look at the Post. And the Post says Catholic faithful must stand up to protect church under siege. The current leadership of the Catholic Church on Guam is under siege. A committee of unsecured creditors is primarily representing the plaintiffs in the nearly 200 sex abuse cases against the Archdiocese of Agana. Altogether, the claims could top $1 billion. The committee has filed court papers in the district court seeking possession of all local church assets, including the Archdiocesan Crown property, the Dulce Nombre de Maria Cathedral Basilica, the Catholic schools on the island that educate many students, as well as the church-run cemeteries, so that these assets can be sold off. The Archdiocese has repeatedly acknowledged the past crimes of former priests and certain other members of the clergy, including former Archbishop Anthony Apparon against former altar boys and other minor victims. Archbishop Michael Burns has apologized. In fact, even before the Archdiocese sought to reorganize under the federal bankruptcy law and sell off some of its assets with the intent of compensating sex abuse victims, it had announced plans to sell real estate holdings, with the exception of the churches, cemeteries, and schools. The former Axion Hotel, which had been a cemetery, as you were, seminary, big difference between a seminary and a cemetery. The former Axion Hotel, which had been a seminary, was one of the assets the Archdiocese was trying to sell to compensate the sex abuse victims. The victims do need support from the community and in their legal quest for compensation. Regular members of the Catholic faithful in previous statements also felt empathy and compassion for the victims, but many have said their faith has never wavered. Having said that, a line must be drawn to protect the churches, schools, and cemeteries from being auctioned off to the highest bidder. These edifices need to survive past the allegations of sex abuse. Many of the Catholic faithful still need the churches for solace and to practice their faith. Many still need the Catholic schools to educate and help mold the moral values of many students from Catholic families, and the Pigu and other Catholic cemeteries on the island must remain as places for Catholics to bury their dead. The faithful must stand up. Your church needs you. So put on your law and order hats here. Get out your law and order notebooks. Where we are is that the Archdiocese of Agana filed a petition for a Chapter 11 bankruptcy. And the way that works is that the bankruptcy court appoints a trustee, or the United States trustee becomes a trustee, and it's the trustee's job to take an inventory of all of the assets of the bankrupt, and that becomes what's called the bankruptcy estate, and to determine what the liabilities of the bankrupt are. The bankruptcy trustee then works out with the creditors of the bankrupt a plan, and that plan distributes the assets, or makes a disposition of the assets and distributes the proceeds to the creditors of the bankrupt in accordance with different kinds of preferences and security. So what has happened in this case, the official committee of unsecured creditors gathered together by the bankruptcy trustee has counsel, and counsel has filed an adversary proceeding inside the bankruptcy case. Now, bankruptcy is a federal matter, national government matter, and let's see if I can find the provision in the Constitution that provides for it. Well, I can't find it, but it's here in Article 1, Section 8. Yeah, here it is. Article 1, Section 8, Paragraph 4. To establish a uniform rule of naturalization and uniform laws on the subject of bankruptcies throughout the United States. So the Congress enacted the Bankruptcy Code, and in the process created bankruptcy courts in every one of the 93 districts in the judicial districts in the United States. Ours is a little different than the rest because in all the other districts there is a separate bankruptcy court. In our district, the District Court of Guam, which has the same jurisdiction as a U.S. District Court, is also the bankruptcy court. I can't give you a good explanation, but I could speculate that the reasoning is that there wouldn't be enough bankruptcies in a city of 160,000 to merit the creation of a separate bankruptcy court. And that's probably right. We just don't have that number of bankruptcies. So they're handled by the Chief Justice of the District Court, Francis Tydenko Gatewood. So the bankruptcy operates in the manner that I mentioned, appointment of a trustee, etc. And then there are conflicts within the bankruptcy case. And a conflict within a bankruptcy case is called an adversary proceeding. And an adversary proceeding is like a small trial inside the bankruptcy. So I'm looking at a paper here entitled District Court of Guam Bankruptcy Division, case number 19-00010, Archbishop of Agana, debtor, versus Official Committee of Unsecured Plaintiffs, as you were unsecured creditors, plaintiff. And the unsecured creditors have filed against the Archbishop, and what they're asking for is a declaratory judgment that the disputed property is the property of the estate, free of the interests of any other person or entity. Now, the Archdiocese has been pretty coming forward and saying, you know, the things that are not churches, schools, or cemeteries, yeah, they definitely belong in the bankruptcy estate. We're perfectly willing and ready and able to sell those and use the money to recompense the plaintiffs in these sex abuse cases. In fact, there's a story in the paper that there's an offer for the old Axion Hotel, which is where the seminary was located, for over $5 million. The Archdiocese has also announced that it's selling some of its commercial property and the Chancery in Agana Heights, where the bishop's quarters are located, etc. But the church, the Archdiocese, has maintained that the churches, cemeteries, and schools should not be part of the bankruptcy estate, and their legal theory is this, that although the legal title to that real property may be in the Archbishop of Agana, a corporation sole, the Archbishop or the corporation sole is a trustee for the school, the cemetery, or the church. So that being the case, then those assets should not be part of the bankruptcy estate because they are not, in effect, according to the Archbishop, archdiocesan property. the Committee of Unsecured Creditors are saying, no, that's not right. All of that property is property of the Archdiocese. It should all be in the bankruptcy estate. It should all be liquidated to provide funds to satisfy the claims of the creditors of the bankrupt. Now, the Archdiocese has published a decision from a district court in Washington State that pretty much goes along with the Archdiocese's theory, or maybe it's the other way around. In Washington, there was an archdiocese, several schools, etc., and the court there held, the district court held, that those properties were actually not they were the property of the Archdiocese held in trust for the individual school, etc., and those properties did not come into the bankrupt's estate. I'll come back and finish this up after this break, and then we'll go on to the card. We're back to the Mayor's Council versus a train.
Help celebrate Earth Month with 93.3 The Point and the return of the Upcycled Mascot Showdown. Stay tuned for details on the upcoming live event and how you can support your favorite school. The Upcycled Mascot Showdown, brought to you by Lolita Kamet from Remax Diamond Realty, the Agana Shopping Center, Sylvan Learning Center, PBS Guam, and 93.3 The Point.
Lent-friendly burgers at Chili's. Indulge in a selection of our famous burgers with a black bean patty. Black bean patties combine beans with onions, parsley, bell peppers, and cilantro. Served with dill pickles and fries. More Lenten entrees include the spicy shrimp tacos, Cajun pasta with shrimp, or grilled ancho salmon. Best of all, each entree is just $15 and comes with a refreshing Coca-Cola, iced tea, or Heineken on draft. Our fresh house salad with an entree for just $15. Chili's 3 for Me Lent menu. Available for a limited time. Chili's. More life happens here.
And now, back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the one radio show politicians don't want you to listen to. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
So, of course, this adversary proceeding is really important, because if the theory of the official Committee of Unsecured Creditors is correct, it could mean that all of the property that the church owns, right on down to St. Anthony's Parish Church, the school, etc., could be sold, and the proceeds used to pay the damages of the, among others, the plaintiffs in the sex abuse cases. Now, there are other creditors. The Bank of Guam is a pretty good-sized creditor, too, because the Archdiocese owes the Bank of Guam a fair amount of money, and there are other creditors. So it's not just the unsecured creditors who are the unsecured creditors that would be interested in the decision on this particular matter. So what will happen is this matter will be briefed. I would expect that the unsecured creditors will file a motion for summary judgment supported by memoranda and affidavits. The Archdiocese will do the same thing. Judge Gatewood will take the matter under advisement, issue a decision, and then ordinarily a decision and appeal would lie from there to the district court. It's a little bit of a problem if Judge Gatewood hears the matter in the bankruptcy case and then appeal flies to the district court. I don't know if another district judge would be assigned to hear the appeal or how that would work. I suspect that's what would happen. But it's going to be a really important matter for the bankruptcy to deal with. The whole sex abuse thing is probably the biggest news item since World War II. It's really had an effect on the island, and it's going to continue to have an effect on the island. So that's where we are with the bankruptcy case. So there's some real competition here today between the Daily News and the Post. I'm inclined to give, to give the blue star to the Post because my sympathies, frankly, lie with the Archdiocese. However, I'm supposed to, once in a while, not act in a completely subjective manner. What day of the week am I supposed to do that, Real Joe Cruz? Friday?
I'm not sure, sir.
Yeah. You've never seen it happen.
No.
Huh? Good answer, Real Joe Cruz. So today, I think in light of the return to active duty of the Daily News and the fact that they did make good points in their editorial on an issue that we all need to be concerned with, I'm going to give the coveted blue star to the Daily News. I guess when I started reading the Daily News editorial, I should have had you play that Welcome Back song because they've been gone for a while, right, Real Joe Cruz?
Yep, they're back.
They're back. Okay, well, out of the corner of my eye here, I've seen some posts on Facebook. So rather than wait until the halftime show, I'm going to see what comments. It's okay to make your comments on the phone, too, 888-8255, if you would like to call and make your comments there. Listen to your voice as it sounds to our international radio listening audience. But anyhow, we've got James Howard, who is I don't know if he is a fan of one of our callers or perhaps a fan of Elizabeth Warren from Massachusetts, because James Howard says Tom, as though he's waiting for Elizabeth Warren to beat her tom-tom. And then he says, half a day, Judge Bob. And then I've got Jesse Limtiaco, half a day, Bob, from the U.S. possession of Guam. Well, between 1898 and 1950, you'd have been right, except I wasn't here then, Jesse. Guam was a possession until 1950, and when the Organic Act was enacted, you read the second sentence, and you'll find that Congress recognized the territory of Guam. So Guam is no longer a possession, it's a territory. There are those, of course, who would say, well, that's really a distinction without a difference. And then James Howard goes on to say, it's not what you know, it's what you can prove. Okay. And then Jesse Limtiaco, I think, talking about the dump, another court order by a federal judge appointed by our colonizer. Now, I thought Francis Gatewood was appointed by the President of the United States, Donald Trump. And I don't think Donald Trump ever colonized anything. You'd have to go back, if Francis Gatewood had been appointed by William McKinley, you might have a point. Maybe even Teddy Roosevelt. But I think Trump's been accused. Trump's been accused of an awful lot of things, but I don't think anyone ever accused Trump of being a colonizer. Maybe now that this post has appeared, the Twitter mob will pick up on it and start accusing Trump of being a colonizer. Then we've got James Howard. Don't give trash back to Gov Guam. He says it's a bad idea. Jesse Limtiaco. Why then give anything to Gov Guam? And then James Howard. 1 billion? No problem. Okay. And then James Howard, the Post Blue Star. And then we've got Javier. On Guam, he would be Javier Atalik in Gilita, He would be Javier Atalig. Javier M. Atalig Jr., why do you think Bishop Burns is here on Guam? To save what he can and dump what he has to? Well, I think Archbishop Burns is here because the Pope sent him here. And I think that Archbishop Burns is probably what you might call a prisoner of events. He came to a crisis that was created before he arrived, and now he's in a situation where he has to do the best as far as crisis management is concerned. So at the time that the church filed its petition for Chapter 11, I thought it was the best possible thing to do, since it appeared that mediation and settlement talks didn't seem to be going anywhere. And even if they had, it would have been necessary to liquidate a lot of church property to pay off those claims. So the good thing about Chapter 11 is that it allows a business to continue to operate during the pendency of the case. So the church, during the pendency of this case, still in a position where you can go to Mass, where the schools operate, etc. And it's unfortunate that this entire matter is going to be resolved in a judicial forum. In a sense, I can blame the institution called the Catholic Church, because when at the very beginning, the church didn't deal with it. And church, I mean the Rome and the Pope. Instead of sending somebody out here to deal with it, they sent Bishop Hahn out here who had kind of figured that I'll just come out here and I'll make it all go away. And it didn't happen. He just made things worse. And that's part of the reason that we are where we are right now. So in that respect, I kind of agree with the Post editorial. It's time for Catholics to do what they can to help their church. Unfortunately, the time to render extreme help to the church is gone. It's over. But every Catholic kind of needs to do what he can. And then Eddie Cruz comes along and points out that Burns is spelled with a Y and not a U. Okay, Burns. So that's our Facebook comments up until now. I put away Zemi Ekotny and turn to the card for today. And this is what I've got on the card. Yesterday I talked about the Mayor's Council of Guam versus a train, if you remember that. And what pithy little aphorism that I have there. I said I said that the Mayor's Council of Guam wrote the rules and regulations for carnival gambling on the back of an envelope. Well, writing on the back of an envelope. Remember that real joke, Cruz?
Yes, sir.
Kind of picking up on an old joke about Lincoln and the Gettysburg Address. Well, capitalizing on that, if that's what happened yesterday, today the Mayor's Council wants a re-ride. If you've ever ridden on a roller coaster at an amusement park, when the roller coaster gets to the end, the ticket guy will come along and say, re-ride. You can give him another fare and he'll let you stay on for another ride. So that's where we are. And then Sedfree versus Lou is back for the second look. And then I've got Joe San Augustine versus the Mayor's Council. Well, the mayors are really in the forefront here. And Lou versus austerity. And then I've also got Rory versus the Civil Service Commission. And then some things that I didn't get to before. So starting out with the mayors, versus a train. And here's the story that broke on KOAM today. The third time may be the charm for games of chance rules and regulations. As reported, rules and regulations for Liberation Carnival games of chance were sent by Adaloop to the legislature last Friday. And I commented that they had 60 days to do these rules. They did a really lackluster job, but they did it quick. They did it really fast. It wasn't a very good job, but they got it done really fast and sent it to the legislature last Friday. However, what they sent to the legislature lacked proper signatures, according to the office of Speaker Barnes. Governor Leon Guerrero's legal counsel, Haig Huen, signed off on the copy sent to senators Friday, but the rules were lacking signatures from the Director of Revenue and Taxation, the Attorney General, and a representative from the Mayor's Council of Guam. Now, that would have been key because, that would have been a $100,000 signature if Angel Saban had signed it. After a second copy of the rules and regs with appropriate signatures was sent to Barnes's office on Monday, it was discovered the rules and regs did not meet several criteria laid out in Senator Moylan's law. The rules sent Monday did not provide information on how the proceeds from the games of chance would be split among villages, details on how minors will not be impacted, how mayors will spend proceeds from games of chance, protected revenues, and maintenance plans, which is probably good because the statute says that the money goes to a fund created that's set out in Title I, and half of that money is at the disposal of the mayors. So some of that money can be used to go to the Strawberry Festival and the other things that the other duties that the mayors have. It reminds me of Amerigigo. During his first term in office, went to one of these festivals in Manila or in the Philippines. You and I paid for it. We paid for his ticket. We paid for his salary and per diem. But he couldn't go by himself. He asked the Mayor's Council to send Angel Saban with him to staff him. So the Amerigigo, Rudy Montanani, was so important that he just couldn't go by himself. He had to be staffed on his trip to Manila. Now, these are things to keep in mind when we're talking about the proceeds from gambling here. So back to the KOM story. Another copy of rules and regs addressing the previous copy's shortcomings was sent to Barnes's office late this morning, marking the third time Adaloop sent them in a span of days. Good job, Mayor's Council. I said from the very beginning, of all of the organizations on the island to ask to do rules and regulations, I can't think of a more inept group than the Mayor's Council, a group that I think probably we don't even need to start with. The end of the story, there is a public hearing on the submitted rules next week, and we look forward to asking the questions, Moylan said. Ultimately, the initial green signal to proceed will come from the legislature. So let's see if they can address some of the unanswered questions. Well, Senator Moylan, there shouldn't be any unanswered questions. That's why senators draft bills. They draft bills to be complete and deal with a subject that the bill addresses. They don't do half of it and then delegate the rest of it to some outfit like the Mayor's Council. So I don't know, maybe we'll come back to the Mayor's Council after the seventh inning stretch. It looks like this is the third strike for the Mayor's Council. We'll see if they get on base. Okay, then the next item I have here is SEDFREE versus Governor Leon Guerrero. Now, this is about marijuana. So, spoiler alert for those who have delicate feelings about anyone who would be critical of the legislation that legalized marijuana and or cannabis, this is your spoiler alert. So I hear the plaintive strains of Dave Brubeck's Take 5. We'll come back to Sedfrey versus Lou right after this.
Valley Finance has been serving the people of Guam since 1959, and they'll continue to be there for you in the years to come. Whether you're looking to get a personal loan for that summer vacation or paying off those long overdue bills, Valley Finance has got you covered. Apply for a personal loan from $1,000 up to $3,600 by calling Family Finance in Agutya at 475-4545, Upper Tumon at 647-5626, or in Dededo, 633-4473. Family Finance, serving the people of Guam since 1959.
Join us Saturday, April 13th for the 5th annual Chucky Run and Fun 2K, 5K, and Flyaway giveaway. Showtime at 5:30 and go time at 6 a.m. T-shirts, medals, and other cool prizes, including the grand prize trip for two to Manila. Register at Hornet Sporting Goods or Chuck E. Cheese's Guam. $8 for students, $12 for adults, and Group of 4 Super Saver for just $40. The 5th annual Chucky Run and Fun 2K, 5K, and Flyaway giveaway. We'll see you there.
Okay, so here we are, Sedfrey versus Lou, and you'll recall that Sedfrey filed a complaint in the District Court of Guam, naming Lulian Guerrero as a defendant and alleging that what Lulian Guerrero did violates federal law and several other things like that. So I mentioned my comment on this program was that the district court is not going to have venue over that complaint, or whatever complaint Sedfrey wants to file, because district courts only have jurisdiction over cases and controversies arising under federal law or the United States Constitution, and Sedfrey's case does not arise under the laws of the United States. I did point out that there were a couple of legal theories that might get Sedfrey into the Superior Court, one of which was the Enforcement of Proper Spending Act, giving taxpayers the ability to sue when the government of Guam is spending money illegally, and that the threshold that in order to have standing, a person need only be a resident of Guam and a taxpayer. That's all you need, and you've got standing. And the threshold is $1,000 spent, or possibly, potentially being about to be spent. So I went through the budget, and there might be an item in the budget that plays right into Sedfrey's hands. On page 28 of the budget, I found this rather shocking statement. Section 21, Department of Public Health and Social Services Medical Marijuana Laboratory. For fiscal 2020, the sum of $750,000 is appropriated from the general fund to the Department of Public Health and Social Services for the purposes of funding a medical marijuana laboratory. So, I hear those who are saying, well, Bob, you shouldn't be against medical marijuana. It's not hurting you. If you don't want to do it, fine. But what about everybody else? Well, I always come back to this nasty question: who's going to pay for it? And here's the first inkling of who's going to pay for it: me and other people who don't think it's a good idea, taxpayers, including Sedfrey. Now, when I saw this, I said to myself, boy, this is really pushing it, because if we had our own if the government of Guam ran this medical marijuana laboratory, not only are we enacting laws that condone the illegal use of medical marijuana, we're actually dealing with it ourselves on a piece of government property. I said, man, that's really pushing it. This morning, somebody asked me, what is the deal on marijuana and federal law? Is it What is it? I said, it's illegal. It's against the law. And then that person said, well, I heard Levin Camacho. What did Levin Camacho say? Our Attorney General. And I said, well, Levin Camacho said that so far there hasn't been any prosecution of any state officials in the states where it's legal. So, and then the question was, well, how does it work here? And I said, well, here, what we're doing is we're not concerned with what is legal. We're concerned more with what we can get away with. That's where we are right now. We're not concerned with what's legal. We're not concerned with the oaths that we took. We're concerned with what we can get away with. But if we had that medical marijuana lab, I think that's really pushing it pretty far. Well, as luck would have it, PNC ran a story that kind of provides something of an answer. And the story is titled, Administration Submits 2020 Budget, including $750,000 for cannabis testing. And I'm sorry, I've got a KUAM story here. It goes into it. In a transmittal late Monday to the legislature, the Leon Guerrero administration is proposing a $966 million budget. I got to dig through my papers here to find the right one. I'll come back to that. I have an article here. If I'm able to find it, I may have to wait until the break to find it. That talks about what the money is for. It's not for a lab. But I can't find it right now. But while I'm at it, I'm just going to cruise around through the budget a little bit. I'm going to start out here with a story from KUAM that ran on April 8th. And it talks about the Mayor's Council and the budget. A ban on hiring deputy directors and a hiring freeze implemented to save money in the fiscal 19 budget law have been struck down as violating the separation of powers by former Governor, former Attorney General Elizabeth Barrett Anderson. The Leon Guerrero Tenorio administration has hired deputy directors at just about every agency. And while salary increments for classified government of Guam workers have been frozen since October 2018, KOM News has reported on several big money raises for classified employees, including $5,000 to $10,000 pay raises for Adelube staffers and a $22,000 pay raise to Mayor's Council Executive Director Angel Sablan. Meanwhile, Guam's... Okay, I'm going to come back to this after the break, and maybe I can find that article that I was looking on that gives the updated story on the $750,000 for the lab.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Release of the Mueller report coming soon. I'm Carmen Roberts, Fox News. Attorney General William Barr gives lawmakers a timeline for when he will turn over the special counsel's report on the Russia investigation.
Barr's appearance at a House Appropriations Subcommittee was scheduled to be about his budget request, but it was hard to avoid, as one Democrat called it, the elephant in the room.
Let me tell you what I'm getting at, that I find quite extraordinary.
New York Democrat Nita Lowey pressed Barr on how he was able to so quickly issue Special Counsel Robert Mueller's conclusions. Barr says his office was updated throughout the investigation.
And in that context, there had been discussions. So there was some inkling as to some of the thinking of the special counsel.
Barr expects to make a redacted version of the Mueller report public within a week.
Fox's Jared Halpern on Capitol Hill. This as Barr has assembled a team to look into the origins of the FBI's counterintelligence investigation into the Trump campaign. An administration official tells Fox News there's also a separate ongoing investigation by the Department of Justice Inspector General into the process used to obtain FISA warrants to eavesdrop on certain people associated with the Trump campaign. Hostility on Capitol Hill as Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin testifies before the House Financial Services Committee and Chairwoman Maxine Waters.
What I've told you is I thought it was respectful that you'd let me leave at 5:15.
You are free to leave anytime you want. You may go anytime you want.
Please dismiss everybody. I believe you're supposed to take the gravel and bang it.
Please do not instruct me as to how I'm to conduct this committee.
Democrats wanted to know if Treasury would release the president's tax returns. Mnuchin said the Treasury's legal department had informal conversations about it prior to the congressional request, but he was not involved and therefore he could not answer. This is Fox News.
Are you shopping for a home loan with a low, low rate and a fast closing? Because that's what you get with a Bank Pacific My Home Loan. All of our loan decisions are made here by people who understand our island. So whether you're buying or building a home or looking to refinance your existing home loan to a lower rate, come see us at Bank Pacific, where we're open to closing your loan in a hurry.
Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal housing lender, credit conditions apply. Viva Bank Pacific.
The GCC Votech Class of 79 is back. Join them on April 27th at the Onward Beach Hotel for a night of dinner, dancing, skits, and reminiscing. It's been 40 years since graduation, so take advantage of this once-in-a-lifetime chance to relive the memories. There's also a memorial mass on Friday, the 26th, at the Santa Teresita Church. Be there at 5:30 for candle placement in honor of classmates who've gone before. Tickets for the reunion on the 27th are on sale for $40 a person. For details, find Connie Kittiwas and Nicholas at 488-6108 or Kathy Diaz, 777-3243. Viva 79ers!
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu appears headed to a historic fifth term. A very tight election shows his Likud party and other right-wing parties close to capturing a solid majority of parliament.
Former Israeli Defense Forces Chief of Staff Benny Gantz and supporters of his centrist blue-white party are not conceding defeat yet. Now, the focus for Gantz and his party, if they are excluded from government, will be keeping the pressure on Netanyahu, in particular over the potential corruption charges the Prime Minister faces. In a political sense, very little has changed here in Israel.
Fox's Jonathan Hunt in Jerusalem. A soccer fan sues the California Department of Motor Vehicles.
John Cutler claims the DMV violated his First Amendment rights by rejecting his choice for a personalized license plate. He applied for a plate that would read COYW, an acronym for Come On You Whites, used by supporters of London-based Fulham Football Club. The DMV said the abbreviation could have racial overtones and carry connotations offensive to good taste and decency.
Fox's Lisa Lacera, and coming soon to a screen near you, a prequel to Grease.
Grease is getting another word. The hit movie that spawned a sequel will now get a prequel.
Summer lovin' had me a blast.
Summer Lovin' will tell the story of how Danny and Sandy first got together. And as we all know by now in the famous song from the film starring John Travolta and Olivia Newton-John, it'll be inspired by the stories that they separately tell their friends about the summer fling they shared.
Under the dark.
The film grossed $181 million in 1978.
Fox's Michelle Polino, and stocks in Asia and Europe follow the Wall Street stocks lower. The Dow dropped 190 points yesterday. Carmen Roberts, this is Fox News.
The stations of Choice Broadcasting would like to congratulate Burger King on their 30th anniversary.
Give yourselves a round of applause.
Thank you for serving Guam with your great tasting food from your friends here at 93.3 The Point.
Happy anniversary, Burger King.
The GCC Votech Class of 79 is back. Join them on April 27th at the Onward Beach Hotel for a night of dinner, dancing, skits, and reminiscing. It's been 40 years since graduation, so take advantage of this once-in-a-lifetime chance to relive the memories. There's also a memorial mass on Friday, the 26th, at the Santa Teresita Church. Be there at 5:30 for candle placement in honor of classmates who've gone before. Tickets for the reunion on the 27th are on sale for $40 a person. For details, find Connie Kittiwas and Nicholas at 488-6108 or Kathy Diaz, 777-3243. Viva 79ers!
So I was reading an article here that I dug up going back to the 8th of April, KOAM story dealing with budget and freeze on salary increments and some of the raises that had come along. And when asked about Angel Sablan, the $100,000 man at the Mayor's Council, this is what Senator Joe San Augustine said. The Mayor's Council, they control their budget now. So if they want to give somebody an increase for $22,000, that's beyond us, San Augustine said. So the message here is that we'll just let them waste the money themselves instead of us wasting it. That's beyond you. Well, it shouldn't be beyond you, Senator Joe San Augustine. One would think that if you're going to appropriate money to an agency, you see to it that none of it is wasted. Perhaps this matter took you by surprise. That's, I suppose, a little bit understandable, but to say that it's beyond you, when you're a senator and when you enact budgets and you say it's beyond you, well, you ought to move around a little bit, advance, move forward so that it's no longer beyond you. And then over the break, I found the article that I was looking for. Before the break, I read that paragraph in the budget that appropriates $750,000 to the Department of Public Health and Social Services to establish a marijuana lab. And now I've got a story from the Post that said budget, and this is this morning's Post, budget shorts medicinal marijuana program funding. And here's what it says. A provision in Adelupe's budget request for fiscal year 2020 for a medical marijuana laboratory should be for a medicinal marijuana program. The budget request submitted to the legislature on Monday states that $750,000 is appropriated from the general fund to the Department of Public Health Social Services to fund a medical marijuana laboratory. The amount falls short of the needed $790,000, but it's not for a lab, public health officials stated. They need $790,000, but they don't need it for a lab. Janela Carrera, the governor's spokeswoman, acknowledged both issues. Regarding the reduced appropriation level, she stated, The important thing is we are moving the ball forward in funding the medicinal cannabis program, and the construction of the budget request involves balancing a budget. Carrera also said the administration will clarify that their intent is to facilitate the medicinal marijuana program and not a laboratory. Public Health Director Lyndon DeNarcy said the funding request was intended for the program. She said public health is responsible for issuing a laboratory license and should not be involved with its operation. She said a private business will have to perform the laboratory testing after it applies and is approved for the license from public health. DeNarcy said the funding request for medicinal marijuana program includes personnel, of course, contractual obligations, and capital outlay projects. More than $300,000 is needed for personnel salaries and benefits to fund hiring 2 environmental health officers. Okay, that's 2 employees, 1 program coordinator, an administrative assistant, and 1 systems programmer. So we got to spend $300,000 hiring people at a time when the governor during the campaign season said she was going to streamline the government. Another $246,400 is needed for contractual services, such as software licenses, as well as vehicles. That should include a maintenance contract, so we're going to have to buy some vehicles too. The department also wants $125,000 for a seed-to-sale tracking system, and another $10,000 and $15,000 for office renovations and camera ID equipment, DeNarcy said. The remaining costs include $32,000 for equipment, $19,500 for supplies, cameras, and fuel, $19,000 for online certification courses, $16,000 for travel to send staff to learn more about medicinal marijuana. Funding issues and the lack of a testing laboratory have been holding back the medicinal program despite its enabling legislation enacted years ago. The recent passage of the Guam Cannabis Industry Act legalizing adult-use recreational marijuana may open doors for investors looking to set up a lab, proponents have stated. A provision in AdLub's budget for fiscal 2020 as you were. So what we have here then is a mistake. According to Janela Carrera, the $750,000 is not for a medical marijuana lab. It should be for a medicinal marijuana program. And I read you the details, hiring a lot of people, buying a truck, buying this, buying that, etc., spending $750,000 to get this marijuana program up off the ground. And of course, the contrast, I can contrast it with a story that I have here that goes back to the Post way back in March 7th about the money that the Leon Guerrero administration was spending that seems to be exactly opposite of what she'd promised. Streamline the government, no new taxes, keep costs down. So I'm going to cruise around the budget a little bit in the process of zeroing in on that $750,000 for the lab. I found some other interesting things, but let me go to Facebook here for a second. Yeah, it's always fun. Starting out with not every village has a senator, but every village has a mayor, Klitzkie said, yeah, for better or worse. James Howard, where does the surplus go as assets and revenue from the carnival is done? Well, it goes into that slush fund, half of which is available to the mayors. Another Joe Cruz says, Sedfree is stale like a rotten turkey tail. Okay. And Jesse Limtiaco, bill to allow mayors and vice mayors to solemnize weddings, Bill 520, as you were, Bill 320. Senator Klitzkie, sound like you used to like mayors having more power, sir. Actually, I wanted senators to have less power. So I got half of it done, but I didn't get the other half done. And by the way, that bill didn't pass. Joe Cruz, this isn't you, this is another Joe Cruz. You, meaning me, Paul Zerzan, Dave Davis, Ron McNinch, Tom, that would be our Tom. What's the other Tom's name?
Tom Poole?
Yeah, I don't think he's included in this very select group. Tom and Ishizaki should all move to a private island and hold hands and sing anti-cannabis songs. Yeah, well, I wonder if on that private island, would we still be able to get the Guam Post? Or, yeah, perhaps the Guam Post would have to move to that same island.
You could do Zemi Cutney from that island, sir.
Yeah, well, maybe the Guam Post would have to move to the island. And then another Joe Cruz goes on to say, you all can be salty together. Yeah, salty. Because you can't stand someone living and enjoying life. Now, if I were to put on my lawyer hat there and expound on expound on a way of construing statutes called the negative pregnant, this statement is negatively pregnant with a statement that the only way a person can enjoy life is by using cannabis. So is that what you mean, Joe Cruz, that only a person can only enjoy life if he uses cannabis, and those people who are not using cannabis are not enjoying life, and obviously they don't want to see anyone else enjoying life? So it kind of reminds me of, I've been to Disneyland several times, kids, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, etc. But I always had to be really careful when I walked in the gate of Disneyland to put my blindfold on, because there are an awful lot of people there enjoying themselves. Yeah. So I guess the ultimate argument is that if you don't like the laws that we pass, you really ought to move somewhere else. And our society, we don't have a whole lot of sympathy for people who don't like laws that are on the books. Now, how would that have worked last month when the law was on the books that possessing marijuana was a violation? Interesting. And then Jose Martinez's comment on the select group, he says, I feel so left out. I don't know, maybe a blow to his self-esteem that he's not a member of the, let's see, Klitzkie, Zerzan, Davis, McNinch. I think it's 6. Maybe we could start our own hockey team. Yeah, that I guess maybe Jose feels left out, that he's not part of the 6.
The Salty 6.
The Salty 6. There you go. The Salty 6. Way to go, real Joe Cruz. Yeah. So I'm going to petition for the admission of Jose Martinez to the Salty 6, because it still works. The alliteration would still be there. It would be the Salty 7.
Nice.
So I'm going to work on that for you, Jose. Okay, and then Ishmael Velez confesses that he's late. Better late than never, Ishmael. Okay, so so much for spending $750,000 to get the medicinal marijuana program up and running. And I did cruise through the budget, and let me share with you some of the interesting things that I found in the budget in my quick run-through. At Section 23, I found, as you were at Section 24, I found this. Section 24, amendment to appointment of the Chief of Police. And it amends part of Title 10, and it changes the qualifications to be Chief of Police. And the way I read it, it's in statutory language, so it's not really easy to read. But it removes the bachelor's degree or higher in police science, criminal justice administration, public administration, law, or closely related field from an accredited institution from the qualifications. And instead of that, this would be sufficient. Have no less than 15 years progressive experience in government law enforcement position, including at least 5 years at the supervisory command level, 5 years in a senior position with a senior enforcement management responsibility, or equivalent executive management experience in the fields of blah, blah, blah. So the college degree requirement was taken out. I suppose some would say that the qualifications were eased up. Now, given my salty nature and my suspicious nature, when I read this, I said to myself, well, we've got an appointment for Chief of Police, Steve Ignacio, and he meets all of the current qualifications. He's coming up for a confirmation hearing, I think, tomorrow, unless Mary Torres all of a sudden decides she doesn't like him. He's probably going to be a shoo-in unless Talina decides not to report his confirmation out, and those are possibilities. So if that's the case, what prompted this? What prompted a statute lowering the qualifications for Chief of Police, taking the academic part of it out and making it just 15 years? So my my what's on second very quickly, Real Joe Cruz, turned into a who's on first. So my suspicious nature says, who is this tailored for? Who is this meant for? Is this a potential message to Steve Ignacio? Steve, you can unpack and you can but don't get real comfortable in your office because we've got somebody else lined up for this job. Yeah. That's what my suspicious nature tells me. And there's a little bit more. That was Section 24. Here's Section 23, appointment of Deputy Chief of Police. The Chief of Police may appoint a Deputy Chief of Police who shall occupy a position in the unclassified service. The Deputy Chief shall perform the duties as designated by the Chief of Police. So we're going to have a civilian Deputy Chief of Police. I wonder how that works. Because conventional wisdom is that when the chief is unavailable, disabled, whatever, the deputy takes over. That works pretty well in most agencies, but the cops are a little bit different. But anyhow, that's what it provides. Second thing is that, the Democrat legislature in the 34th said we don't need no stinking deputy directors. As a matter of saving money, we're going to do away with them. And you remember in the 34th, we were just about 2 breaths from choking to death for lack of money. So we're doing everything we possibly could to save money, doing away with deputy directors, doing away with salary increments. Well, now Lou has submitted a budget putting the salary increments back, creating a position called Deputy Chief of Police for which there are no qualifications at all, just somebody in the unclassified service that the chief appoints. What would prompt this? And you know, where is this openness and transparency that we were told we could expect from the incoming Leon Guerrero administration? Now, when budgets are put out, I think there probably was a time when not very many people did read the budget. Not very many people could read the budget because the budget was about as thick as a Sears Roebuck catalog, and the only way you could get it, you had to go actually go to the legislature and ask for a copy of it. This was in the pre-internet days. But nowadays, anybody with a computer's got access to all kinds of stuff relatively easy. And we went from a time when not very many people read the budget, where the governor has to expect that a lot of people will read the budget. And a lot of them are going to be suspicious and curious like I am. And when they're suspicious and curious, they're going to ask questions. And you've got a director of communications, the legendary Janela Carrera. You've got a spokesman, Crystal Paco. One would think that they would go through the budget and answer the questions before, provide answers before the questions are even asked. What do you think, Andre?
Hi, yeah. Speaking of questions, I got a question about the budget. You know, the $750,000 that I think is proposed to stand up a medical a marijuana testing facility. Will that be a government-owned facility? Will there be a director and some chemists and what have you over there? Is that a whole new kind of agency for us, or is that $750 going to be I don't know, loaned out to someone who wants to do one, or is it going to be part of public health? I don't know. I was just wondering if you knew what.
I do know, Andrea, and I think this must have been one of the days when you got tuned in a little earlier, because I explained that Janela came forward and explained that was a mistake. It's not $750 for a lab. It's $750 for employees, vehicles, and other things, but not for the lab.
But not for the marijuana laboratory?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I must have tuned in late, but this is the place to come for answers.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it.
And by the way, Andre, are you on a salt-free diet?
I don't want to be part of that salty group. I'm on a sweet diet, Bob.
You don't want to be part of the salty 7, huh?
No, I've turned over a new leaf this year. I'm going to be on the sweet diet.
The sweet diet, huh? Well,
there you go. Just asking questions and just, still paying attention, but, kind of staying on the sweet side a lot.
Well, it's always an honor to have your voice broadcast to our international radio listening audience here on Tall Tales, Andre. So thanks.
Well, I appreciate that. This is the only show I listen to for answers and information. Thank you, Bob.
So long, Andre. Andre Bainham. I think perhaps last year he might have been on a high-salt diet.
Maybe he's trying to catch more flies.
Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, you can catch more flies with honey.
Than with salt?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll defer to your expertise when it comes to catching flies. You and Jack Haddock. Jack Haddock was pretty good at catching flies. Okay, so I'm just really curious. And Director of Communications, go through your budget. When you see stuff like this that is going to jump out and grab the eyeballs of the readers, like creating a deputy director position and lowering the qualifications for the chief of police, if you're directing communications, you might want to come out and explain those things, like you explained the $750,000 for the marijuana lab. Unfortunately, you had to explain that it was a mistake. Okay, so that's that part of the budget. And I've already talked about the marijuana lab part of the budget. And then we're going to go back. We're going to put salary increments back into the budget so government employees will be able to receive salary increments next year. Okay, it's just about time for the John Walsh hunt for Jack Haddock. Most wanted, right? Yeah.
Join us Saturday, April 13th for the 5th annual Chucky Run and Fun 2K, 5K, and Flyaway giveaway. Showtime at 5:30 and go time at 6 a.m. T-shirts, medals, and other cool prizes, including the grand prize trip for two to Manila. Register at Hornet Sporting Goods or Chuck E. Cheese's Guam. $8 for students, $12 for adults, and Group of 4 Super Saver for just $40. The 5th annual Chucky Run and Fun 2K, 5K, and Flyaway giveaway. We'll see you there.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
The importance of knowing customer lifetime value and how employee empowerment figures into it. I'm Jerry Roberts, and at 7:20 a.m. on The Ray Gibson Show, we'll talk about taking steps to develop a plan that works for you, your employees, and your customers.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Oh, this is John Walsh, Most Wanted. If you've seen or know the whereabouts of Jack Haddock, call 888-8255. We're looking for Jack Haddock. He was last seen wearing a Tall Tales Tigers baseball uniform, running the bases with great alacrity. Thank you. So back to the budget. Staying with the police, here's a section 13 right at the very end of the budget here in the administrative provisions. Off-island travel by executive security of the Guam Police Department. The Guam Police Department is authorized to expend from its appropriation in this act for off-island travel and per diem expenses for police officers assigned to executive security functions under the Guam Police Department for the purpose of providing executive security to Imagahaga and the First Gentleman and Isigundo Magitlayan Guahan when traveling off-island to represent the people of Guam at meetings and functions determined critical to the welfare of Guam. Now, that last sentence, I don't think they were very careful in their choice of words there. Functions determined critical to the welfare of Guam. Not, kind of nice or nice to have or a lot of fun, but critical to the welfare. So I'm going to be watching and seeing if this part of the budget passes, just to check on the trips that these three make to make sure that they're critical to the welfare of Guam. And then I thought we kind of got away from this whole idea of executive security in the last budget. You'll recall that Governor Calvo's ran up a $22,000 overtime bill when 3 cops went with his wife back to London to pick up the First Lady's daughter from school. We just can't afford this kind of stuff, guys. Lou, we can't afford this stuff. I don't understand the idea that when you travel, you've got to have a cop at your side. Where are you going to go? All right, so that's the police department. And then, again, in the line of streamlining the government, Section 39, appropriation to the Department of Administration for Competitive Wage Act study. For fiscal year 2020, the sum of $300,000 is appropriated from the general fund to the Department of Administration for the purposes of contracting with a consulting expert on classification and compensation in public employment to conduct a study of all government Guam positions to include the nurse and educator pay plans. The contract shall include the conduct of compensation training to the human resources staffs throughout the government. So we got to spend $350,000 to do a study so that we can give government employees another raise. Now, it's nice for people to get raises, but can we afford it? You remember going back to the hearse parked in front of the hospital? So many doctors in their hospital gear clogging the public hearing room that three people were diagnosed with white coat hypertension. You remember all of that stuff? And now we're talking salary increments. We're talking a deputy director at the police department, a new competitive wage act study, and so on. Now, remember, the executive proposes a budget and sends it to the legislature. And the legislature has extremely broad latitude as to what to do with this budget. The legislature could pick it up and say, this is really nice, and toss it in the shucks can and say, we're going to do our own substitute bill for a budget. Or they could take the governor's budget and do what I think they ought to do and go through and take all of the expenditures out of it that we can't afford. This budget is $10 million higher than last year's budget. And you remember all of the stories about allotments not being released to both the public, to the schools, and to the university and GCC because we didn't have the cash. So we're going to solve that problem by increasing the budget by $10 million. So this is going to be your opportunity, Senators. Looking through my political prism here, where is it? You remember my political prism filters out all concepts like fiscal autonomy, fiscal integrity, morals, public policy, and the only thing that comes through, yeah, that's it. The only thing that comes through are political considerations. So members of the legislature, if you are responsible, you won't pull a Joe San Augustine like he did with Angel Sablon's $22,000. Well, if they want to waste that money, we can't do anything from that from here. I hope you don't do that, because what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to go over that budget with a fine-tooth comb and cut out everything that isn't absolutely necessary and get it down to something that we can afford. Now, if you do that, who's going to take the hits? It's not going to be Lou, because Lou is going to say, Lou has positioned herself quite nicely to say, oh, government employees, I wanted you to get a salary. I wanted you to get your salary increments back. And, oh, government employees, I put money in for a new Hay study so we could give you all a raise, including teachers and nurses. It was that doggone legislature that took those things out. But I was good. It's kind of like Lou at Guamatren Killadat, when her director of Guam Housing and Urban Renewal Authority said, we're sitting on an extremely valuable asset down here in Tuman. We could sell it or lease it, and we could provide housing to thousands of more people. But Lou went down there, and there were 54 old folks down there. And Lou said, I'm not going to do that. You don't have to move. And Lou signed the bill to appropriate money to the Election Commission, providing $98,000 to give employees at the Election Commission a salary increase, even though there's no election this year, no election until way next year, where she could have shown us that she really is interested in fiscal integrity by using her line item budget authority and reducing those raises to zero. Okay, let's pick up and see what Bruce has to say here. Good afternoon, Bruce. Hi, Bruce.
Hey, how you doing there, Mr. Klitzkie?
Well, better than I deserve, probably, but what can you tell me, Bruce?
I just was, what you were mentioning, the Hay study, I believe. I was involved with the Hay study when I was with DOE, and after all that work and all that money spent, I think we got 2 increments, and then it was canned. It's never been implemented since. But they turned around, and the executive branch suddenly had a Hay study, and they got all those raises, if you remember that.
I do, yeah.
Yeah, we really need to tighten the belt, watch our spending.
Spending is okay if you got money to spend, but we're in the hole. There's a huge chunk of our budget. 10% of our budget just goes for debt service to pay the debts we've already incurred.
That's right. Yeah, I just want to make that comment because a lot of the things that we spend money for, these studies that you just talked about,
yeah,
the waste of money.
Yeah.
Especially when they don't give any returns.
Exactly.
Just wanted to chime in. Thank you.
I appreciate your call. Thanks for calling, Bruce. So, yeah, the other governor, Leon Guerrero, says, what makes you think the legislature will take them out? Look at the casino bill. I think when he says them, you know, the word them now, I used to be able to handle the word them really easily, but now I got to look around the room to see if any person is involved. I think what Ken means is take those lofty expenditures out. And Ken, I looked through my political prism, and I said, this is what you ought to do, but this is the political price you pay, because Lou has set you up, members of the legislature, so that if you act responsibly, which will appeal to some of your constituency, but if you do, Lou is going to be able to say, well, you can't blame me for this because I took care of the government employees. It was the legislature that took it out. So much for the Competitive Wage Act. I've got another one here somewhere. Yeah, now here's a real good one. We have a couple of fiscal management tools. Let's talk about government finance. We've got the Department of Revenue and Taxation. We've got the Director of Revenue and Taxation, whose responsibility it is to collect taxes. And when he collects taxes, the money goes into the general fund. That's why when you pay your income tax, you don't make it out to the Department of Revenue and Taxation. You make it out to the Treasurer of Guam. So the money goes into the Treasury. How the money comes out of the Treasury depends on a couple of agencies, the Bureau of Budget and Management Research and the Director of Administration. The Bureau of Budget and Management Research looks at the cash flow of the government and the outstanding expenditures of the government and determines how much money can be released to various agencies to pay for the obligations arising for that agency. The Bureau of Budget and Management Research then makes an allotment of those funds to the requisite agency, and in the line agencies, the Director of Administration then would pay the bill that allotment is addressed to provided that the director of administration determines that the government has enough cash in the bank to pay that bill. So those three agencies are where the money flows through the government of Guam. And in a sense, the most important is the Bureau of Budget and Management Research. Directors will tell you that the power that a director has is minuscule compared to the analyst at the Bureau of Budget and Management Research that is in charge of his or her or their particular agency, because that Bureau of Budget and Management Research really has a tight control over purse strings. And that's a good analogy, purse strings. When the Bureau of Budget and Management Research pulls those strings tight, you can't stick your hand in there and get a quarter out. Can't even get a penny out. So that's why I thought that Section 22 here on page 64 of the budget was really important. Section 22, Bureau of Budget and Management Research, Competitive Wage Act, Employee Appeals Pay, pursuant to the authority under Section 6218.1 of Title IV of the Government Code, to allow retroactive pay adjustments. The Bureau of Budget and Management Research is hereby authorized to utilize its general fund appropriation in Section 1ID, Chapter 2 of this Act, for the sole purpose of paying retroactive pay adjustments to affected BBMR employees. This authorization will be applied retroactively for the period of January 26, 2014 to September 30, 2020. So here we are. Section 22 provides a retroactive salary increase going back to January 26, 2014. For which employees was it again? All the employees? No, it's just the employees of BBMR. Oh, that's kind of cozy, isn't it? And once again, I have a question. I would have thought that the answers would have come out before the questions came out, because this just doesn't look right. Where the executive budget gives a retroactive salary increase to the folks that control the purse strings. So much for the governor's budget. I'm looking back, again, I'm looking back to March 7th here, and a Post article, cost of ad loops actions adding up. Lots of promises have been made in the first 2 months of the new administration, and the cost of keeping them is adding up. The final total is yet to be calculated, but the administration's budget office reports that 5 of the 6 special revenue funds are tracking below the amounts budgeted for this year. In addition, the budget office reports that the first quarter of the fiscal year, revenue collections for the general fund are down nearly $6 million from the previous year. The same report projects a $10.2 million surplus by the end of fiscal year on September 30. Will that be enough to cover the commitments being made by the new administration? And of course, I got to once again mention, everybody in Guam got a pay cut when the legislature increased the gross receipts tax by 25%. Remember that? Remember how necessary that was? So every one of us got a pay cut when that happened. And what happened with the money from that pay cut? Well, we're going to give salary increments. We're going to give we have a new Hay study. We're going to give a retroactive raise to the guys at BBMR. We're going to spend $750,000 on cannabis. Good thing that we got that increase in the GRT. But going back to this March 7th article here, during the campaign last year and in her inaugural address, Governor Lulian Guerrero promised her administration would work to make Guam safe, rebuild schools that are falling apart, fix the island's pothole-dotted secondary roads, and regain accreditation for Guam Memorial Hospital. During high-profile visits to the police and corrections departments, Leon Guerrero promised to hire more corrections and patrol officers. Okay, well, we're coming up on the home stretch. I'm going to finish this article, take one more peek at the Facebook comments, and call it a day here on Tall Tales.
Here at APL, our core values give the company its heart and soul. Whether it's connecting your business with our global network through our newly enhanced service or investing our efforts into giving back to the community, APL is committed to serving you. We humbly honor the opportunity to find innovative solutions for you and your business. To learn more about our enhanced service, call 588-4651 or visit www.apl.com/Guam for more details.
Docomo Pacific's all-new business bundles provide tailored solutions to help your business become a better business. Choose from our business basic, essential, or value bundles and get unlimited talk and text, worry-free data at home and abroad, plus access to the fastest online speeds in the Marianas. Add on mobile or broadband lines and save up to 20% for each line. Email businesssales@docomopacific.com to find out which bundle provides the best solution for your business. Terms and conditions apply.
Well, it's the home stretch here on Tall Tales. I've got about 9 more minutes here, and I'll be heading home. You know what I think I'm going to do when I get home, Real Joe Cruz?
What is that, sir?
I'm going to grab a couple of boiled eggs out of the fridge.
Nice.
And liberally garnish them with pepper and salt.
Whoa.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if I can stand it, sir. You'll be living your best life.
Yeah, I'll be enjoying life in the privacy of my own home. Yeah, getting my serum saline level right up to normal levels.
Yeah, well, they do say cannabis is safer than salt.
I guess nobody ever died from an overdose of salt.
Yeah, maybe.
Right?
Probably.
Yeah. Going back to this March 7th article, is right on point. The article says that Lou appointed deputy directors after Barrett Anderson struck the provision down as inorganic. Not correct. She started naming deputy directors before the Attorney General came down with that ruling. Going on, new departments and senior level positions have been created by the new administration and old ones revived. Among them are a chief advisor on fiscal discipline, chief advisor for economic development, national and international affairs, the Bureau of Women's Affairs, and the Hagatna Restoration and Redevelopment Authority. The salaries for directors of those agencies range from $66,000 to $90,000, not to mention staffing and office space rentals. The governor has also revived the Chamorro Land Trust Commission and Guam Ancestral Lands Commission as separate agencies with separate staffs and budgets, reversing a 2011 cost-saving move that merged both into the Department of Land Management. The governor has declared her intention to move into Government House in Agana Heights once the repairs have been completed, at a cost that has not yet been announced. A year ago, a fiscal crisis was declared in the wake of the Trump tax cuts, which then Speaker Benjamin Cruz feared would cause a more than $120 million budget shortfall. Months of wrangling produced a 2019 austerity budget that included more than $30 million in budget cuts and $78 million in tax increases, the bulk of which is attributable to the 20% increase in the business privilege tax from 4% to 5%, which is projected to raise $68 million this fiscal year. And we've seen what's the disposition of that is. The Consolidated Revenue Expenditure Report submitted to the legislature shows revenue collection decreased by $5.9 million in the first 4 months of the 2019 fiscal year compared to the first quarter of the previous fiscal year. However, let's see. The budget law, however, funds only what the prior legislature authorized. None of the new promises, newly created employee positions, and new departments are yet reflected in the budget report. Separate from the barely balanced general fund are special fund revenues, and we know that those are down. So for all the campaign promises, and for everything that's going on, I just hear too many people say, it's no different. Nothing changed. The names on the front door have changed, but nothing has really changed. It's the same old thing. Pander to the government employees. Don't economize. Don't streamline the government. Don't use your reorganization authority. Just continue on the way that we've always done it. That hasn't worked, and it's not going to work, and it's going to cause serious problems to an awful lot of people here very quickly. So that's pretty much it on the budget. I did have one other thing here that I could just toss in just between now and the end of the program, and that's a story from the Civil Service Commission that Civil Service Commission approved the termination of Police Lieutenant Eddie Castro. As you were, the Superior Court approved the Civil Service Commission's upholding of the termination of Lieutenant Eddie Castro as a police officer at the port. And the allegation was that Castro filed a false timesheet, went to visit his girlfriend in his company car on working hours, etc., and he was fired. Civil Service Commission sustained the termination, and Janelle, as you were, Judge Senzon determined that it was a good bust. Initially, the CSC ruled Castro should be demoted to the lowest law enforcement position in Gov Guam, quote, unarmed guard, close quote, but that position doesn't exist at the port. So the commission upheld Castro's, as you were, termination. Phillips, this is attorney Mike Phillips, says Castro's case is a good example of why cases shouldn't be settled before they run their course through adjudication. So we had this cop, he was fired, he appealed to the Civil Service Commission, the Civil Service Commission said it was a good bust, he went to the Superior Court, the judge said it was a good bust. Now, the one thing missing from this story is that Rory Respicio wasn't interviewed. And we know that no personnel action dealing with the port is complete until Rory has determined whether or not it's appropriate. He has a special task force to determine that. And so Castro might get his wife to circulate a petition in praise of Rory Respicio and then present it at the next board meeting for the port. Okay, that's it for Tall Tales for today. See you tomorrow.